I might be having technical difficulties here. On one of my screens, I can see myself, and on the other, I cannot. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, now it does look like it's working. Okay, so, okay, let me continue. Thanks again for your patience. Okay, so now that the intro is done, there were a few things I wanted to talk about this week. And in the description, you can read below. I have all the links there, and the topics are like, what is leverage yield farming? The next topic is going to be the Bitcoin Summer Boost module and an update, because for phase 2, the module is going to be different. And then also a demo. I made a little model so you can plug in your values and estimate how many rewards you're going to get. So we'll go over that later. And then the third is lending wrapped BTC on Mars and Amber. And they're slightly different, and I want to go over the differences, and maybe that will it'll appeal to different people depending on what your risk and your objectives are. So let's get into the question of the week. Thank you, Eddie, for asking me what is leverage yield farming. He saw it on another application, and so he sent me the link, and we're going to check it out. First of all, I have never used this app before, so I don't know how good or safe or whatever it is. I'm not endorsing this application. I'm just using it to answer some questions. Okay. So the app is called XtraFi, and what we're going to get into here is leverage yield farming. And so what that means in general is that you are going to deposit usually half of the LP in either of the tokens, and then you're going to borrow the other half of these tokens. And then you can leverage, and there are a lot of different levers that you can pull to leverage your position to be either short or long or sort of delta neutral. And so we're going to go over what some of those options are and like how to digest this, because if you look at the screen right here, there's a lot of information here. And so let's try and understand what we're actually doing. And so, okay, so let's just back up a second. This is the main UI, and what I'm going to pick is this LP here, which is wrapped ETH and USDC. And so it looks like I connected my MetaMask wallet, and we're on the base network. And we're going, and this is an LP on Aerodrome. It's got 15 million TVL. Or sorry, this LP has 302,000, but Aerodrome, at least that's what I'm interpreting, on Aerodrome it has 15 million TVL, and through XtraFi there's 302K that are farming. The base, it looks like the base APR is from 17 to 39%, but if you're farming with leverage, then you can get up to 62%. So let's see if we can get that. Okay, so we click farm. Now we need to decide how we want to participate in leverage yield farming. So you have 3 options. One is, do you want to just farm rewards and kind of be sort of delta neutral? Or are you long either of the assets, usually the risk on asset, or are you short the risk on asset? And so using, like, first you have to pick between these 3 things, and And I think this leverage yield farming is really the best when you do it with assets that are not extremely volatile and also that are paired with USDC. It's like much easier to measure your risk, and also with high incentives. And so that's like kind of the combination I look for when I'm identifying good LPs for leverage yield farming. And then of course you want the incentives to last a long time. So I don't actually know where these incentives are coming from, but you know, when you're doing your due diligence for entering a DeFi position, look for where these fees are coming from. They might be swap fees, which would be great. If they're not swap fees, then look at like how long the incentive plan is for these incentives. But right now, the base APR about 16%. And so let's see how that number changes depending on which assets we pick and how much leverage we use. So let's say I have one, let's say I want to do the delta neutral, like sort of delta neutral strategy. Okay, so that means that I probably want exposure to USDC and I don't care about exposure to Ethereum. So I'm going to assume I have like $1,000 of USDC that I'm ready to deploy in this LP. And what I'm going to do with the other half of this LP, because you know you need to, when you're LPing you need both sides, I'm going to borrow the Ethereum half. And so that is what is going on here. When you know, you can pick templates. This is actually really nice. There's a lot of information here, but you know I like lots of data here. So we're gonna do this neutral, you know, 2x. This is basically what we're setting up. So you can just click on it and it pre-fills it for you. But what this is doing is it's going to borrow the same amount of dollars worth of Ethereum as your USDC deposit. And so that's 2x means, you know, your position is now twice as big as it was before. So you had $1,000 of USDC and now you're adding $1,000 of ETH. But you're like, well, where does that ETH just come from? Well, you have to borrow it. And so what this app is doing in the background is it's using your USDC as collateral and borrowing $1,000 of ETH, and then the whole thing, you know, is kind of being locked in this position, and you're earning the APY on your whole position. So this effectively allows you to farm on twice as much capital as you initially deposited. But of course, there are risks and restrictions that you need to be aware of. And so that's what we're going to talk about next. So first of all, you should be curious about what the borrowing rate is for Ethereum, because you're going to borrow ETH on, you know, using your USDC as collateral. So it says here 9% is what you're paying to borrow ETH. And that's why it looks like if you scroll up here, it's showing you what your new rate for leverage yield farming is. The base rate was 16%. So you're like, well, 16%, I just put in $2,000 on my $1,000. I should now double that. But no, because you need to remove the cost of which you're borrowing Ethereum. So that's what they did this math for you here. You know, you get the 31% minus the borrowing rate. So now you've upped your farming rate from 16% to 22%. So that's pretty nice. And it looks like, you know, you can keep going. Actually, let's keep talking about this for now, because in my past, I've always done this 2x. You're borrowing the same amount as your initial collateral. I think it's really clean and it's really easy to understand what's actually going on when you're just 2x. Things get more complicated when you start to lever it up more. So let me pause there and see if anyone has any questions before we go into some of the risks and the finer details. Okay, no questions. You guys are great students. Okay. Okay, so this chart, we're going to go on to this P&L simulation. And so this chart, let's check it out. On the y-axis is your P&L, so this is how much you're making, and then on the x-axis is the price of wrapped ETH in USDC. So this is why I said before, it's much easier when you're doing this kind of leverage yield farming against USDC, because it's much easier for you to think about the risks. So, where did okay, so this is the current price of ETH, 3,500 about, and this is what will happen to your LP if the price of ETH changes. The price of USDC will stay the same. So if ETH goes up, you're actually losing money. This dotted line here is your break even. So this dotted line is showing right now as you open the LP. Let's assume you've collected 0 rewards from your LP because no time has passed. One block later, now all of a sudden Ethereum is worth $5,000. Let's just say you're actually going to be down quite a bit. You're going to be down, this is so tiny, 6%. You're going to lose 6% on your collateral. And you're like, why? Because that's basically impermanent loss is affecting your LP. As Ethereum increases in price, the LP, in order to stay balanced, Ethereum goes up, and so it's selling ETH in order to rebalance the pool. Arbitrageurs are coming in, and you're losing money. Okay, so as Ethereum goes higher and higher and higher, you are going to be losing more and more to impermanent loss. So, and again, that's why I said I like to do this with assets I know are not so volatile, because look, this is what, a 2x here? Yeah, so this graph stops at a 2x. So if Ethereum does a 2x, you're going to be down 16%. It's like quite a bit. If you look at the APR, that's almost a whole year of farming rewards that you're forfeiting. And the same thing if Ethereum goes down. It's a little different, a different curve because of how this works, because you're borrowing Ethereum. So technically, as Ethereum goes down in value, how much you need to pay back also reduces. But then there's also the impermanent loss in the other direction. So that's why this curve looks different. And of course, if Ethereum goes to 0, your LP will be worthless, and so you have a total loss of your LP. And so that's why this left side is trending towards 0, and the right side is just trending downward. And so this UI is really cool though, because it allows you to simulate how many days are you going to be in this LP, because that's the other important factor. Remember, I said you want the highest yielding LP for the low volatility tokens. So 22% APY. So let's say, we're in this for 1 month. So now after 1 month, we've earned, 2%? We've earned about 2% in rewards. And assuming that Ethereum has not moved pricing at all, then yeah, look at this. We're up about 2% in interest because Ethereum has not moved. However, if we go on either side, so let's say, you're pretty bullish, or let's, maybe Ethereum goes up to, what is this? Here. If Ethereum goes up to 4,500 within the next month, or at 30 days, we are break even. And you can see that by the line that says leverage farming is almost 0%. Your LP value is down, but you've earned interest on the yields of this LP. So you could be in this pool for 1 month and earn nothing if Ethereum goes up to $4,600. So these are the risks. This is the risk of leverage yield farming. I would say one of the largest risks of this is that you enter an LP and the price just starts swinging wildly, and you don't have enough time in the LP to recoup your losses. And again, I think that's not crazy, 4,700, but that's kind of near the recent highs. And so if that happens in a month, you'll earn nothing. Same thing in the other direction. If it goes down to 2,000, I think that's very unlikely within the next month, but you'll be down almost 4% if it happens within the next 30 days. So again, these leverage yield farmings, I think, are more of long-term things, and that's why I like long-term with low volatility and high APR farms. So if we bring this back out to like 90 days, so 3 months, you see how this break even, the curve starts to go higher than the break even amount because you're earning all those yields from the LP. So now you have much more space under the curve that is above this dotted line. So that means you're still in profit. Okay, so that's how we understand this graph. We talked about how we want high yielding pools on low volatility tokens. I think Ethereum is a good one. You know, this option actually could be pretty good. Let's see what happens when we leverage up to something like 3x. You see the curve is changing. And now you see a liquidation price. Because now we have to go look over here. We're still depositing 1,000 USDC. And here, so here's our supply. 1,000 USDC is being supplied. And now we're borrowing 0.5 ETH, which is about $2,000. And we are supplying, and this is where it gets complicated, we're supplying like about 2/3 of that. So we're supplying 1,500 of that into ETH, and then we're also going to add another 500 onto our USDC position. So you see we're borrowing Ethereum, and then we're selling that for USDC, some of that for USDC to add to our LP because it needs to be balanced. And in the end, after we're done borrowing and swapping, it needs to be balanced. And so that's why this curve starts to get really wonky, because what we did is we actually borrowed ETH, but we sold it. So we're actually a little bit short on ETH. Not fully short on ETH, but like it's not pseudo delta neutral anymore. We are now taking a slight short position on ETH, which is why if the price of ETH goes down, you see this curve gets much higher now. And we can bring it back to day 0 again, and you'll see if ETH goes down, we're actually in good profits, and that's because we're short ETH. However, if it goes up, we're already down, because again, we're leveraging this up to be short ETH. And again, and it reaches liquidation at some point because we're short. And if you expand it out to 4x, you can see it just gets more and more steep. So then it looks like you can play here with the different toggles for template, pseudo, delta neutral, 4x with long and short. This is what I was saying, long and short. This is basically what we were simulating before, is the short side. You can also do the same thing. If you think Ethereum is going up, then you can do the same thing, but reverse, where you're going to be borrowing USDC and swapping that for more Ethereum to add to your LP. And that's why the curve looks different. And if ETH goes down, then you're at risk of being liquidated. And the reverse, if ETH goes up, then you're profiting quite a bit. And this is all not considering the rewards that you're getting from LPing. And so look what happens if I start sliding this curve. You see the break-even line is going down because those are all the rewards that you're going to be earning from the LP. So this is a cool app. I really like this curve. I think it's really useful for helping to understand these dynamics. If you go back to pseudo delta neutral, you can see at 2x, there's no liquidation right here, because as your assets move, they're still being like used as collateral against each other. And so there's not really a liquidation risk. However, if you go pump this up to 3x and eventually 4x, you'll start to see that there is a liquidation threshold. And so you stand to gain more from the total APR. This starts to go up a little bit. I would say not even worth it though, because look at 4x for the pseudo delta neutral, we're only earning about 28% APY, whereas for the 2x, we're earning 22%, and there's very, very little risk of liquidation. So these are all the factors that I consider with leverage farming. And I'll stop there and see if anyone has questions about this specific UI. And then I want to talk about how you can do the same thing on Mars, or a very similar thing on Mars. Okay. Okay, so we talked about leverage yield farming on this platform, XtraFi, which I am not endorsing. I've never used before. Eddie, I hope I answered your question with like how to use this platform for leverage yield farming. And now we're going to get into how to do something very similar on Mars. And so Mars is a credit protocol on Neutron, and we're going to explore how to set up a leverage yield farm on Mars and what's available here. And so what we saw with XtraFi, the LPs that are available here are, it looks like they're all coming from Aerodrome. Yeah, all these LPs, yeah. Okay, so all these LPs are on Aerodrome. And so, you know, that's the basis. It has to be on some kind of a DEX AMM. And so this is using Aerodrome. On Mars, it's actually using two different platforms, Astroport and SuperVaults. And so they use two different market making strategies. And so they're slightly different in the way that they function. Actually, let's see. Okay, yeah, right now only the Astroport pools are listed because very recently, I think within the last week, the Mars protocol voted to add SuperVault LPs to leverage yield farming, a couple. I think specifically this SuperVault is being added. And so there'll be a couple more options here to choose from. And so here you go to, yeah, the Earn tab and then the Farm tab. And here are your LPs, and you can see the APYs. And so these three pools have low APYs because they're being incentivized via the droplet campaign. And then this fourth LP is just earning yield. Okay, so 12% APY. And remember, we want to pick low volatility tokens. And so this is USDC and TRN. So if you are considering entering this leverage yield farm, you want to assume, or you want to hope that the price of Neutron will not change that much over the future. So we can go here to deposit. And okay, we need to fund our credit account first. So let's say that I want to do this in a pseudo delta neutral style. So that means what I care about is the basically USDC. So let's add some USDC to our credit account. Okay, so this is adding 25 USDC to our Mars credit account. And what we're going to do is we're going to borrow $25 of Neutron. Okay, so now you can see up here in our account, we have $25. You can look here on the right, you can see our net worth, leverage, okay, our APY. This is coming from lending USDC, but we're going to put it in an LP. Okay, so we check this box here, custom ratio, because that means we're going to add only our USDC and we're going to borrow the Neutron. So now we're adding 25 USDC, 0 Neutron, continue. Now we're going to see what we want to borrow. And so we're going to borrow Neutron. And we need $25 worth of Neutron. What is that? Oh, that's close. Okay. There we go. So we're going to borrow about $25 worth of Neutron. And you'll see here, our total position is now worth $50. Of course, remember what I said, it's important to see how much it costs you to borrow. And we'll see that now our leverage is 2x. So remember, I was saying that I think it's most comfortable to do 2x leverage on this because otherwise you end up shorting one of the assets. And so unless you actually are short on these assets, then I would stick to 2x. And you can see our APY now is going to be 23%. And so whereas initially the APY of this LP is 12.5%, we're now bumping up our APY to 23%. And so this takes into consideration the cost of borrowing the Neutron. Okay, great summary. Let's deposit. And how this is possible is because it's using your USDC as collateral. it's borrowing 100% of your collateral value in Neutron, and then it's depositing that in the LP, and your whole LP is now being used as collateral. And that's why if you go up here, you'll see, oh, we're still not, it's still pending. So once it confirms, we can look at our new health ratio. And all of these assets are staying within your Mars credit account. And that's why up, the other goes down. As long as we're at 2x leverage, it's pretty hard to liquidate this. As we were seeing from the XtraFi farm, pseudo 2x, like even if these assets go up or down 2x, you're still within negative 15% of your total value, and that's even if they 2x. And so it takes quite a bit to liquidate these positions. Okay, cool. The transaction went through, and now we see our active LP, USDC and Neutron. The whole position is earning 12% APY, but now the position value is 50, and we're at 2x leverage, and so now we're earning twice as much with our USDC than we were before. So again, I like this as a pseudo delta neutral position, but what you need to consider is the volatility of the asset compared to how much yield this asset is earning. And so at 23% APY, it's kind of comparable to the previous example we were looking at on XtraFi. However, I would say Neutron is a much more volatile asset than Ethereum, and so it can get risky. You know, if Neutron goes down 50% or if it goes up 2x, then it'll take a long time at 20% APY to overcome the fees that you would have accrued. And so we can kind of simulate that actually with the XtraFi. So this represents a 2x, and so if Neutron does a 2x overnight, then we will be down 16%. But if we're earning 20% APY, you know, that'll take like 8 months to recover. So personally, I am not going to enter this LP because I think Neutron is a more volatile asset, and the likelihood of it making a big swing like that within the next 8 months is possible. And so you might end up having capital allocated here that's not actually earning that much. And so it might be, you know, if you're a risk on person, then maybe you'll take this gamble. But if not, then it might be better to just stick it in something that's a USDC lower earning vault or lending app. So that is how you do leverage yield farming on Mars and XtraFi. So I'll check the questions again. I'll pause here, and then we can go on to our next topic. Thanks again, Eddie, for the question about leverage yield farming. It is like a really fun, I would say, like advancement also in DeFi, because now you can use different tokens. You can play with these levers and pick how much leverage you want, which tokens you want to borrow or deposit in different ratios. And you can start to get really creative with it, because if you do have a directional bias, so if you do think Neutron, or in the other example, Ethereum, are going up, then you can still leverage yield farm with a bias in that direction. If you think it's going down, then you can do the same thing. And so it really gives DeFi strategists a lot more tools and like tools to work with in order to profit off of what their biases are. Okay, let's go on to the next topic, which is the Boost module. Okay, so if you're here, you might have heard about Bitcoin Summer. Bitcoin Summer is a bootstrapping campaign for Bitcoin DeFi on Neutron, and it is a way for the solutions, tools, and infrastructure that Neutron has built for Bitcoin finance to start to get seeded, bootstrapped, and then eventually scale. And so these kind of some of the engines that are at play here are max BTC, which is a auto compounding tokenized Bitcoin strategy earning between 5 and 10% APY. And so historically it's been earning about 7%. And so another one is Amber. Amber is built by the Mars protocol contributors. So the app we were just looking at, and it allows for leverage looping. And so what that is, we've covered this in previous videos. If you need a refresher, you can go back and watch those. But leverage looping is where you deposit an auto compounding token and then you borrow a non-auto compounding token for a cheaper rate than the auto compounding token is earning. And then you just loop that. And so you deposit max BTC, earning 7% APY. You borrow wrap BTC, and maybe you pay 3% APY. And so you're earning about 4% every time you loop it. And in Amber, you can loop up to 12 times. And so this allows you to earn like 30 to 40% APY on your Bitcoin. And that's purely coming from DeFi yields, not from incentives. That is also being incentivized in this Bitcoin summer campaign. And then there's super vaults. So super vaults and Astroport are two different market making strategies. They're two different dexes on Neutron. And so these are both being incentivized also. So depending on where you are on the risk curve, maybe you like to just lend Bitcoin and you can do that on Amber or Mars. Maybe you like to LP Bitcoin with other Bitcoin, so two different Bitcoin derivatives. You can do that with Astroport or Supervault. Maybe you just want to mint max BTC and hold it, then you can do that through structured. And so there's lots of different options for people, whether they're more risk on or more risk off. And all of these different types of actions and strategies you can take on Neutron, they're all being incentivized through the Bitcoin summer campaign. And so you can see here, these are the different rewards that are coming from the campaign, and whether they have 1x or other multipliers, that dictates how much they're being incentivized. And so that's the Bitcoin summer campaign. You can see here we have a few positions going on already. We're looping max BTC in Amber, which is what I just described. We're lending a little wrap BTC on Mars, and we're also lending wrap BTC on Amber, in addition to just holding some max BTC. And so I would say, before I go on, I want to say one comment to clarify things. If you're participating in Bitcoin summer, enter your positions and then you keep them there until the end of the phase. So the phase is 60 days long. If you remove your positions before the end of the phase, then you forfeit the rewards that you have accrued up to that point. And so this phase, the first phase, is ending in 4 days. However, there will be 5 more phases. Each phase is 2 months. And so this is a campaign going for at least a year. And so you have a pretty good idea that the assets you deposit, you're going to be earning on them for a while. One important part of the campaign is that you can boost your rewards. And so you can currently boost up to 3 times the reward you're earning. So we can go here, loop max BTC with wrap BTC. You can see here it's earning 6.5% APY just from the Bitcoin summer rewards. You can increase this by 3 times if you stake and lock the same amount of Neutron TVL as your Bitcoin summer TVL for up to 4 years. But the good news is that's changing, because 4 years is a long time. And we heard back from the community that people just weren't willing to lock their tokens up for 4 years, even for the 3x rewards. And so the max boost is now being reduced to 1 year long. And so all you need to do now is, to get the 3x, is lock the same amount of Neutron as your Bitcoin summer TVL for 1 year, and you now receive a 3x multiplier. And so that news was just dropped on Monday, and so today's Wednesday, and another article will be dropped that will describe more in detail how the boost actually works. And so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it now, because it's going to be released shortly. So one thing that you might notice when you go to stake is, so let's say we can add up these numbers, and then we can go to stake, and let's say, okay, so let's say, this is $121. You can scroll this over and you can see when you start to get to this 3x boost. And you can see at least in my case, I'm getting it much before 4 years, and that's because this account does not have that much funds locked in the campaign, and so if you lock more than what you have, you don't need to lock for the whole year. So this now opens up a few different levers for people that want to start boosting. And so you can boost the same amount of TVL for 1 year and get the 3x boost. You can lock twice as much of your TVL for half of a year and still get the 3x. So this is it's a linear boosting system, so you can play with the time and the amount to still optimize yourself for a 3x boost. Maybe you don't want to hold that much neutron, but you're willing to lock for a longer amount of time. So you can now lock like a quarter of your Bitcoin Summer TVL for 4 years and still get to the 3x boost. Or maybe you're okay locking a lot, but only for a short time. So you can lock 4 times the amount of your TVL and only for a few months and still get max boost. And so it really opens up a lot of different options for people that have different price biases on the price of neutron, or maybe time biases on how long they're willing to lock. And so in order to help people figure this out, I built a little model with the help of ChatGPT, and it's going to be released in this article. And so here it says the BTC campaign boost, and then you put in all these different things. We're going to go through it in a second, and so but I want it to be self-explanatory so that you guys can figure this out without my help. And I'm just laughing because I'm reading the comments. The Neutron Foundation is watching me, and they see that I'm spilling the alpha. Okay, so one final comment before we dig into this model. Previously, the ratio of Bitcoin Summer TVL that you needed compared to your neutron amount, the amount of neutron, it was hard-coded at 1 million neutron equals 1 Bitcoin. And the reason for this is because we wanted people to be able to secure a boost, and then they know that their boost is their boost for the phase. And so if there was not a hard-coded ratio, then as the prices of neutron and Bitcoin are changing, the boost that you thought you locked yourself in for could change. And that's not really fair for the participants. And so what that hard code means is that if the price of neutron drops below that ratio, you can actually attain the same boost for less dollars. And so that's kind of hard to think about. And so that's another reason why I made this little model. And so this model has the hard-coded ratio in here, which is this line here, neutron per BTC at 1 million. And so what this is going to show you is that, let's say your Bitcoin Summer TVL is 1,000, you might only need like $700 worth of neutron in order to achieve the max boost. Whereas on paper, it sounds like you need $1,000 worth of neutron to boost your $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. So that's I would say a nice little bit of alpha for people that are considering boosting, and they can use this model to help plan. So let's fill it out for our test account. So the max boost amount, anything that's in white, don't change. And I have here little notes here that say don't change it, but I can't lock the cells because it's a shared sheet. So anything that's yellow is what you're going to change. Okay, so let's say the price of Bitcoin is 100,000. It's about that. It's 104 or whatever. The price of neutron about 5 cents. Again, it's about that. You can update this with the exact information if you want, and yeah. So then this is the staking APY for neutron, because your boost is actually staked while it's locked, and so if your neutron is locked for 1 year, the staking APR of neutron is about 3%. It's actually locked in DNTRN, so there's a little bit of a performance fee from drop, and so that's why it's a little less than 3%. And then I also added this category because another kind of interesting layer, if you want to be a bit more degen, is you can borrow neutron on Mars and then use your borrowed neutron to stake and lock. And so, of course, that's introducing risk and leverage, but if you don't want exposure to neutron, this could be an option for you. And so it's important to consider the borrow cost of neutron. Of course, this can change over time, so that's an added level of risk. Okay, so here you would fill out your borrowed neutron. If you do want to borrow neutron and use it to lock, you would fill out this module. If in my case, we're not going to, so let's do this. This is our own locks. And again, you can make multiple locks. You can lock up 10 neutron for 4 years, and then maybe you lock up a larger amount for a shorter amount of time. And so you can kind of ration out your locks and your risks and how much boost they'll give you, and then try and get to the 3x multiplier. Okay, so let's, and then you go down here. This is all automatically calculated for you. And then you go down to here in the BTC positions and you fill out your positions. You can add more positions here if you want. And then you fill out the amount in BTC and then the APR that you're getting. And then what will be filled out is down here. It'll show you how much you're earning now versus with the locks, how much you are going to be earning after the locks are applied. And then it'll show you in dollar amounts, like, oh wow, I'm getting $100 more per year and I only had to lock up $100 in neutron. Like, you know, then it makes it much easier for you to think about what does a 3x multiplier actually mean for my positions and in dollar denominated rewards. And then this module is for target boost planning. So say you want 3x, but right now you only have 1x. How much more do I need to lock in order to achieve that 3x? And so we can go through and fill it out now, but I would love it and appreciate it if you guys can also try it. And if you find any bugs, let me know and we can fix them together. Okay, so let's fill in what are our current positions here? I'm going to ignore the loop positions. Let's just fill in these ones. So $37 of Bitcoin, and it's earning, why is that not showing? Like the one that is not showing? My computer is like too many tabs, too many streams. Man, it's really not liking me. All right, well, you get the point. We can fill in a couple examples. So let's say, you know, we have 0.001 of Bitcoin, which is $100 of Bitcoin, and it's earning 14% APY because it's being lent on Amber, for example. And then let's say we have another $100 that's earning 10% because it is being held in max BTC. Okay, those are the two positions. So right now our effective APY is 12% because it's averaging, you know, these two positions. And let's see what it would be if we lock, I don't know, 500 neutron for 1 year. Okay, so it shows here the value in USD, which is 500 neutron is $25 according to the specifications I put in at the top. So $25 locked for 1 year, and my total value of Bitcoin Summer is $200. And so what that is giving me is a boost of it's giving me an added 0.8% APY. That is the boost if I'm locking $25, which is 1/4 of my total. That is 1/8 of my total Bitcoin Summer TVL. For 1 year, it's giving me 0.8% higher. But that's not the boost. That is like what the, given my current rewards, what is the additional reward I'm going to get? And then it says here in my planning, if I want the 3x boost, I need an extra $97 of neutron, which would be another 2,000 neutron. We need 2,000 neutron. Okay, so let's say we're adding another 1,500 for 1 year. Now you can see that we're getting higher up here on the boost. And so yeah, like that's how this model works. Fill it in, you play with it, and if any of the titles here don't make sense, I tried to add a note to clarify what they are for. And if you don't get anything, then ping me in the Neutron Community Telegram, and we can work through it together. And so I'm excited to see some of these filled out, like little workshops at your class. And so show me your filled out model. Do you guys have any questions on that before we move on to lending on Amber and Mars, because we're getting close to the end here? Okay. Okay, so as we saw from the Bitcoin Summer campaign, there are lots of different ways that you can earn on your Bitcoin. And one way that I think is very appealing to people that are typically more risk off is just lending your Bitcoin. It's easy because you're not taking any leverage on. It's usually, or it is single token deposit, so you don't have to swap your tokens around. You're not entering an LP where when you withdraw, you don't know what ratio of tokens you're going to receive or what to do with its other token. You know, maybe you only want exposure to one of those tokens, not to the other token in the LP. And so lending is really easy. And so I wanted to talk about those two different ways to earn. So you can lend your Bitcoin on Amber using here the Amberfi app.amberfi.io. You can go to deposit, and this is where you're lending. And this is already crazy. If you lend Bitcoin on Aave, you're getting 0.01% APY. Whereas here, if you're lending on Amber, you can get between 0.2 and 1.7% APY. Granted, this is because this does not have that much lent right now, but the wBTC market has, I think, $800,000 worth of lent Bitcoin. And so, even if you go deposit another 100K, this number is not going to come down very much. So yeah, you would just go here, deposit. I think we have some wrapped Bitcoin in this account. Let's connect. Okay, and then you would just deposit, and you would see that this is the historical TVL of wrapped Bitcoin being lent on the market versus the APY that you're going to be receiving over time, and you can see that it's maintained pretty steady above 0.74% for all of November. And so that's also important. If you're looking at a lending rate, you want to make sure it stays steady and it's not just like a spike and you're being duped into lending something at a higher rate. So that's all you would need to do. Deposit, boom, and then we sign, and you're earning 0.92% APY in just DeFi lending rewards. And on top of that, you're being incentivized via the Bitcoin Summer campaign for, I think, 20% APY. That number is also going to go up in the next phase, which was also outlined in the previous Bitcoin Summer post. I'll try and send that link around, but in case you missed it, there's a Medium article from the Neutron Foundation, and it tells about some of the differences and how the campaign is being incentivized. And I would say the larger difference is that now this market is being incentivized a little bit more. Okay, so maybe you're like, okay, this is great, I can deposit wrapped Bitcoin here, but I want to borrow against my deposit. If you want to borrow against your deposit, so maybe you're bullish Bitcoin and you want to borrow dollars against your Bitcoin, then Mars protocol might be the more appropriate place to lend for you. So just like we saw before, app.marsprotocol.io, go to earn and lend. Scroll down and you can see that there's now a market for wBTC, which is the Eureka Bridge wBTC, and it's earning an additional 13% APY from the Bitcoin Summer campaign. In just straight native Bitcoin rewards, 1.2%. So again, this is like significantly better than other more traditional lending markets. I'm even seeing other lending markets incentivizing their Bitcoin up to between 1 and 2%. So this is in line with other places that are being incentivized on top of the native yield. So this is just the native yield, and then the incentives is an additional 13%. And so this option might be good for you if you're planning on borrowing against your Bitcoin stack. And then you can go to borrow, and these are the available assets to borrow. Borrowing USDC is actually pretty cheap right now at 5%. And you could even take that and then go somewhere else and farm at higher rates. But that, again, taking on a leverage is an additional risk factor, so that has to be the right strategy for you. Okay, final thing, I want to sweep one galactic quark off of the market. Previously on this live stream, I was minting galactic quarks, and actually they minted out on Halloween. And so now I can't mint anymore, so I'm just going to go buy one. Let's see, what are we gonna buy this in? We can buy Neutron or USDC, so I want to check which one I have. Okay, I mean, I could use either. Let's use Neutron, so the floor here, 350 Neutron. Let's buy this. It's actually a pretty high rank too, because in the future there's going to be like NFTFi, which allows you to put this NFT into a particle generator, and then it spits out tokens, and you'll get more tokens based on the more rare NFTs. And so this is kind of a steal at rank 1000 on the floor. Okay, so I'm going to give this NFT out to someone in the audience who participated. So if you commented on the YouTube, or if you commented on the Twitter live stream, then you are now eligible to win this galactic quark. And with this token ownership, you can go verify in the Discord, and they do content bounties, they do raffles, they do lots of fun stuff over there that reward you for being a holder. And so thanks you guys, everyone, for showing up to this week's Yield Lab. And I hope you learned a bunch about leverage yield farming, about lending Bitcoin, about Bitcoin Summer, about the Boost module and how it's changing in phase 2. And there's lots of more phases ahead of us. So, the earlier you boost, the more time you have to earn those boosted rewards. If you have any other questions, drop them in the comments now. I'll stick around for like another minute and see if anyone asks anything. Otherwise, I'll see you next week, and thanks guys for coming. All right, see you next week.